Paralogue 1. Tragic Start. Corrin receives a report that a nearby village is under attack by Faceless. The group rush to the village with the hope that they will be able to save the victims. Please ignore the fact that the map puts this village in the heart of Hoshido. Also, I have to say, I'm disappointed with the localization team for using British-style notional agreement between group and rush instead of God's own formal agreement. The group rushes, thank you very much.
We've got trouble.
No!
This mission is a very simple route map. There are a whole bunch of level 6 Faceless scattered around the village, and there's a single level 10 boss Faceless standing right out in the open. None of the enemies have any skills at all, which is typical for paralogs that are accessible in both Birthright and Conquest, as this one is. In Birthright, most enemies don't have skills, and the developers maintained that in the shared paralogs, rather than implementing separate versions for each campaign. The point of Paralogue 1 is that it's a training ground. However, we're already well ahead of the level curve, so most of our characters can't gain a lot of XP here. A level 10 unit gets just 8 experience points for killing an enemy at level 6. The only danger in this mission is that the green unit in the far south, Mozu, will get killed by the Faceless if we don't reach her in time. She is recruitable, so we can't let that happen. But once we rescue Mozu, we will have all the time in the world to dispose of the remaining enemies. And because nobody else really cares about getting kills, we can feed almost all of them to Mozu. To facilitate that, we've removed every single damage boosting skill from our units. Silas doesn't have Elbow Room, Elise doesn't have Strength +2, and Odin and Nyx don't have Malefic Aura. Our current units may not stand to get a lot of experience, but they can still generate a ton of support points and weapon experience as they set up kills for our new recruit. Over the course of this run, there will probably be several occasions when we will power down our units on purpose so that they don't kill the enemies. Of course, we probably won't be doing it across the entire team. We can only get away with that right now because we're so far ahead of the curve. Our first goal is to move Corrin all the way down to Mozu as quickly as we can. The faster we recruit her, the faster we can start training her. In the first few chapters of Conquest proper, terrain hasn't restricted our mobility in any meaningful way. Chapter 6 is a grassland with very little time pressure. In the Woods of the Forlorn, you don't really have to go anywhere. Almost every tile in the Ice Tribe village is a frozen plain, except when you trigger the Dragon Veins. And Fort Dragonfall has some waste tiles, but they're only on the periphery of the map. Here, there's a river cutting across the middle of the stage, just like in Chapter 6. But now we have a real reason to cross it quickly. Because of that, Elise's ability to fly actually matters. Instead of having to go over a bridge and deal with all the Faceless in the way, she can carry Corrin across anywhere she likes, which means she can go around the opposition. That will allow us to reach Mozu as early as turn 3, even though we don't have Azura available to help out. So why didn't we deploy Azura? We had 8 deployment slots and 10 units to choose from, so we had to leave 2 on the bench. But Azura would be a huge help here. If one of our main objectives is to train up Mozu, it would be great if we could have Azura sing to her. Then Mozu could pick up multiple kills on each turn. And all that singing would help Azura too, because she learns a very useful skill at level 10.
Ready for this?
In a normal playthrough, Azura is almost always worth deploying. But because of the constraints imposed by this challenge, we can't always afford to do that. Most of our characters are only going to be deployed for as long as it takes to level up, get married, and build a friendship. Azura has to do all that too. She could marry one of the men who's already on the team, like Silas or Arthur. In that case, it would be more important to deploy her early, just so we could stop using her husband faster. But our troubles with deployment slots are never going away. We probably won't ever have room to use captured units who don't support anyone, not even the handful of enemies in Chapter 23 who come with 3 or 4 rally skills each. Without those, we'll want to build a couple of rally bots ourselves, mainly from the second generation, since those are the characters who will still be working on supports at the end of the game. One of the best candidates for that role is Azura's son Shigure, particularly when his father is Jakob. That's who Azura will marry, but Jakob won't return until after chapter 15. It doesn't make sense to deploy Azura too often before then. In the meantime, she would take up a slot that other characters could occupy to build their own S supports. If you're curious, the thing that makes Jakob's Shigure special is that because of weird inheritance rules, Jakob is the only father who gives Shigure access to Wyvern Rider. Wyvern Lord is the class that provides the defense boosting rally skill. We'll discuss the particulars of all that when it becomes more relevant.
Are you okay? I'm here to help. I'm so sorry.
Now that Mozu is under our control, let's take a closer look at her. She is the trainee of this game. She's a level 1 unit with very low stats compared to everyone else. Her villager class is pretty weak. There's not a ton of merit to lance infantry in Conquest, and as a support unit in pair-up, villager only increases skill and luck. That said, the class does offer some long-term benefits. Its promotions each have access to a very powerful skill late in the game, and the first villager skill is Aptitude, which boosts all of Mozu's growth by 10 percentage points each. If you do train Mozu, she will consistently become a solid player phase attacker. Unfortunately, her HP stat is never going to be very good, and none of her innate classes have access to suitable 1-2 range weapons, so it's not easy to make Mozu into a conventional enemy phase juggernaut. It doesn't help that Mozu is awful on this map. Without help, she deals 0 damage, and any of the Faceless can kill her in a single hit. Luckily for Mozu, she can overcome these flaws pretty quickly. Importantly, she is the only character with innate access to the Archer class. Archer offers very good skills and it promotes to a flying class, which is a great feature in this game. Moreover, bows are very strong. They have excellent stats, they make it easy to contribute on player phase, and there are a surprising number of places in Conquest where they can be effective on enemy phase. Therefore, Mozu would like to become an archer ASAP. If you can't spare the heart seal for a while, she can also start wielding bows by promoting to merchant, which is the bulkiest bow class in the game. Her friends and her husband can become archers too by using friendship or partner seals, because the villager class is genetic and can't be acquired through supports. Mozu's personal skill, Forager, is pretty forgettable. It's nice to get free healing, but mountain and forest tiles are fairly rare in the Conquest campaign, and field and wasteland tiles might not exist at all. I can't remember any. Our main goal for the rest of this mission is to train Mozu. The experience scaling in this game will help her catch up fairly quickly. She won't actually reach level 10, but with any luck, her growth rate should make her stats a lot more respectable by the time we're done here. Elise has brought Mozu 2 bronze lances, one forged and one not. Both of them are stronger than her brass naginata. Obviously the forged lance is her best weapon, but the unforged lance and the naginata give her other options to modify her damage output. We have to defeat these 2 Faceless blocking the bridge, but after this, every single kill will be reserved for Mozu.
Enjoy the afterlife!
Please, accept my help. Strength is everything! Don't come any closer!
We can get Mozu into combat right away if we put someone east of her, where they can lure the Faceless sitting in the corner. The best person to do that is Effie, who makes a fantastic partner for Mozu for several reasons. Effie deals a lot of damage, but she isn't so fast that she doubles, so we can control her output easily. She doesn't take much damage in return, so we don't have to heal her very often. And of course, she and Mozu support each other, and that means Effie automatically uses Mozu's dual strikes instead of Felicia's. Even though this map is mostly a wide open plain, we can control almost every move the enemies make with proper positioning. The only exception is this one enemy running down the west side. We like him to go southeast, and we can influence him to go that way by moving Arthur closer, but there's still a chance that he'll run due south instead. That enemy decided to cooperate, so we're good to go. Mozu will finish off the wounded Faceless, of course, but while she's doing that, we can set up a couple of future kills.
On guard!
stand together!
I'll protect you.
All right!
Felicia makes a very feeble attack using Mozu's dual strike. It's helpful to do this kind of thing because it gives Mozu an extra point of lance experience. Mozu has 2 quick ways to get access to ranged weaponry, and one of them is to raise her lance rank to D so that she can wield javelins. The other way is to make Mozu an archer immediately. But even if that's the plan, it's nice to keep her in Villager at least through the next several turns. If Mozu retains the ability to counter on enemy phase for just a little while, we can level her up a bit faster.
Thanks!
Odin will weaken the Faceless approaching from the north. In the meantime, Arthur and Elise can work together to soften up another one coming from the west. Arthur doesn't need his hand axe anymore, so Elise can take it from him now.
I'm here to help.
You might recall that Korn and Arthur have picked up a single support point with each other on 2 previous missions, in Chapter 7 and Chapter 8. This map is where they can get their 3rd point to finally unlock their C support.
Check out my skills! Hold on a sec! Appearances can be deceiving.
Nyx moves out of the way so that we can execute the exact same routine with Felicia, Mozu, and Effie as we used on our last turn.
Can we do this? Ha! One more!
You are not alone!
Be careful. I'll crush them. Try me off the side.
You saved me! Yep.
C rank and lances gives Effie an extra point of attack power as long as she's not facing bows or axes, or their Hoshidan equivalents. That single point can be significant because Effie is the kind of unit whose value comes from hitting very hard with single attacks, rather than doubling. She's not going to blow past kill thresholds by hitting twice.
Show me what you got!
Mozu is pretty far away from the action, but the pair-up system makes it easy to rectify that. In Fates and Awakening, it's almost always best to keep your units unpaired when they're not participating in combat. This kind of maneuver is one of the reasons why. We've had Nyx stand next to the Faceless to maximize our accuracy against it.
For justice!
Over here! Can we do this?
I'll handle this miscreant!
For this kill, Mozu uses Elise's dual strike. If Elise reaches C rank in axes, then she receives a 5-point hit bonus, not the attack bonus that other weapon types receive. Elise prefers it that way. For her, the accuracy matters a lot.
You're strong.
Ready for this? We have no choice.
Mozu only survives this because of Lily's poise. She can't fight on enemy phase without it until she earns a few more points of HP or defense. By now, I hope you can basically understand the tactics we're using. The rest of this mission is pretty samey. It's all about setting up ways to weaken the enemies so that Mozu can swoop in for kills. So let's spend the rest of our time talking about strategic concern. One question you might ask is this: why did we wait to do this Paralogue? We could have come here right after Chapter 7 or Chapter 8, when our levels were lower. If we had, our non-Mozu units could have been earning substantially more experience from each kill. In Conquest, there are a couple of good reasons to delay Paralogue 1. First, you can't even fill all late deployment slots until after Chapter 8, and if you play this with fewer than 8 units, you're basically just giving up support and weapon experience gains for no reason. Second, after Chapter 9, you get 2 useful tools. One is Azura, we've already discussed her. The other is Haitaka's Heart Seal. anyone who uses it will probably acquire a new type of weapon, and this map is a place where they can train up that weapon rank very easily. But that brings up another question. Why aren't we using the Heart Seal? Let's think about the units on our current roster. Corrin probably should become a Dark Mage eventually, but we're in no hurry because we don't want to lose the Dragonstone yet, and we also don't want to give up the Nor Prince class's strength and speed para bonuses. Those stats are much more broadly applicable than the magic and resistance given by Dark Mages. Obviously, we don't want to take Elise back to Troubadour, because then it would have been a huge waste to make her a Wyvern Rider in the first place. Silas could go into Mercenary. That class does give him yet another damage boosting skill, but it reduces his movement range and it takes away his access to lances, including his only ranged weapons. Arthur can change into a Cavalier. Elbow Room and Shelter are really nice, but Arthur would also lose access to ranged weapons. More critically, we would lose the benefit of the fighter class para bonuses. That's a hefty price to pay. Effie would become staff locked, and that's horrible for her. Odin would give up tomes to be a samurai, which would be a huge downgrade right now. He'd be like Mercenary Silas, but worse. Niles could become a Dark Mage himself, but bows are very useful in the next couple of maps. Nyx could change into a second outlaw like Niles, but her strength is horrible, and the magical bow is still a long way off. As for Azura, changing her class is never worth it. She can only sing if she remains a songstress. So those 9 options all fail the first basic test. You don't want to spend resources to make your team worse. Still, there are 2 other candidates, Felicia and Mozu. Felicia would instantly become a lot more powerful if we made her a strategist. She would gain a mount, and she'd be able to put her decent magic to use offensively with tome accents. The thing with Felicia is that, short of Corrin marriage, there's nothing we can give her that will make her hold up as a primary combat unit for the long term. Her stats just aren't good enough for that. So reclassing the strategist would be only a temporary power spike, and eventually we'd want her to revert to a supporting role. We do want to acquire the inspiration skill from the strategist class, but Felicia's not the only one who can get it, and she'll do a better job as a parrot partner in the anti-mage unit if she remains a maid. Mozu, on the other hand, definitely would take full advantage of a Heart Seal. But before we commit to that, we have to consider future candidates. There are only 5 Heart Seals available before the end of Chapter 20, and we've already used 1. Are there 4 other characters who can use a Heart Seal better than Mozu can? The answer to that is maybe. Besides sending Mozu to Archer, there are 6 possibilities that I think are most worth considering. Corrin to Dark Mage to use the skills from that class as one of our primary combat units. Xander to Wyvern Lord to make him much better in Chapters 19 and 20, and for utility as a flying unit with Shelter. Gunter also to Wyvern Lord for Rally Defense and Flying Shelter. Jakob to Strategist for Rally Resistance and Inspiration, which he could pass down to his sons. Silas to Hero or Soleil to Ninja, en route to a powerful build combining Soul with daggers. And finally, Odin to Samurai. Not right now, but later so that he can pass Vantage to his daughter. Obviously, we can't do all of those things, and the good news is that none of them are truly necessary. If we want to make Mozu significantly stronger, we can afford to give up 1 Heart Seal for that. However, there are other things we may not be able to afford. If this were a typical run of Conquest, then as long as we weren't spending our gold frivolously, we would get more than enough money to cover our needs. But the spirit of this challenge is to make our entire roster the strongest it can possibly be. To accomplish that, we're going to buy a lot of class-changing seals. I expect to spend about 100,000 gold on Master, Heart, Friendship, and Partner seals by the time we're done. To pay for those, we'll need to open up some additional revenue streams. Mozu can help with that. If she stays in the Villager class and eventually becomes a merchant, she will learn the skill Profiteer, which gives her a chance to find extra gold bars during the first 7 turns of each battle. Typically, that'll generate 1 or 2 bars per map, translating to 300 or 600 gold. That's not a ton of money, but if we deploy Mozu often enough, we can probably earn about 2 to 3 extra seals over the course of the run. She can also pass Profiteer to her kid to double up on the revenue. In the end, we might still want to spend the Heart Seal on Mozu, but strategically speaking, we should delay that until after she learns Profiteer, which should happen around Chapter 17. Since we also don't want to give Haitaka's Heart Seal to Felicia right now, the only choice that makes sense is to keep it in storage for the time being. So we've addressed that question, and we've also covered the reasons why we haven't deployed Azura. She's not the only character who got benched, though. Why didn't we bring Niles? We're trying to train our early game units as much as we can, but around Chapter 12 or 13, we'll have to bench almost all of them to make room for new recruits. That's way too early for them to get anywhere near level 25. Eventually, we will have to bring those characters back so they can meet their training requirements. but they'll be terribly underleveled by then, so we won't want to redeploy Arthur and Effie and Nyx and everyone else all at the same time, because then our team would suck. Instead, we'll want to dedicate most of our deployment slots to units that are still on level, reserving only 1 or 2 at a time for someone like Arthur to catch up. Ideally, that single unit will grow from level 15 or so to level 25 in just 1 or 2 maps, so that we can bench them again as soon as possible. It's not going to work that way with Niles. One of the rules of this run is that we're supposed to capture all of the unique bosses. We already got Haitaka, but there are 8 more, 1 in Chapter 14 and 7 others in various paralogs. Because Niles is the only person who can capture, we have to deploy him on every single one of those maps. He will have many opportunities to train during those battles. Accordingly, he needs less attention elsewhere. It's not a high priority to deploy him on other maps. That said, capturing is not Niles' only objective. He's supposed to get married. We're pairing him with Nyx, who gives his daughter some unique abilities. He's also supposed to unlock an A+ support with Arthur, the only male unit who can give Niles a new class. And we want Arthur to marry Effie, since they make a great kid and they can achieve an S support very quickly. We should have room to pencil in Nyx on most missions where we're already deploying Niles, but we can't also do that for Arthur and Effie. It's just not workable to have a quartet of early game characters who all have to be deployed together that late. Too many other units need those deployment slots. Instead, we want to break the connection between Arthur and Niles very soon, preferably by the end of Chapter 11. That means they have to finish their entire support chain by then. It takes at least 5 battles for them to do that, and that's only if they get their C support in their very first mission together. Otherwise, it takes at least 6. As it happens, Arthur and Niles can be used together on exactly 6 missions before that deadline. Chapter 8, Chapter 9, this paralogue, Invasion 1, Chapter 10, and Chapter 11. Because we made sure to unlock the Arthur-Niles C support in Chapter 8, we have 1 map to spare. 1 map where we don't have to deploy Arthur and Niles together. This is that map. Conveniently, we can also finish the Arthur-Effie support chain in the same time frame. They can get married in just 6 missions, but only if they unlock their B support in a single map, which requires them to achieve maximal support points in their second battle together. They didn't do that because that second battle was Chapter 8. And that's okay because they both joined 1 chapter before Niles does, giving them an extra map to work with. Mozu has just unlocked D rank in lances. She can finally use javelins. The ability to attack from 2 range makes her significantly better. It becomes much easier for her to use big dual strikes from the likes of Effie to kill things. In fact, the javelin is going to be her primary weapon for the next several battles. As a level 5 villager with D lances, Mozu is now almost as useful as she would be in the archer class at level 1. The javelin is like a bow, with worse stats, that doesn't deal triple damage to flyers, and is much more expensive to forge. Anyway, that's 1 milestone achieved. We're going to continue feeding kills to Mozu, but it's worth considering what training goals we might pursue with our other characters before we go to Chapter 10. Arthur and Elise are each on the verge of unlocking C axes, which, as we've already discussed, will give them both a nice accuracy bonus. Felicia almost has C daggers, which is a big deal for her because C rank is the requirement to use magic weapons. That category includes the Flame Shuriken, which we will acquire in Chapter 12. We're not going to deploy Felicia at all in the next 2 maps, and she's going to be on healing duty almost exclusively in Chapter 11. So this paralogue is actually one of her last chances to build her dagger rank before the Flame Shuriken comes along. As soon as we get it, we want Felicia to be able to wield it. It's an enormous and free upgrade to her combat abilities. What we're setting up here is a formation that will force one Faceless to attack Arthur and the other to attack Elise. Both of our units will use Effie support. The Effie-Elise relationship is not especially important for gameplay purposes because Elise will usually prefer to work with Arthur or Odin, but the Knight class that Effie offers to Elise is Elise's best friendship class, and we can unlock their A support by the end of our next battle if we work on it here. Like Effie, Nyx supports Mozu, and she wants to gain access to Mozu's Archer class. The difference is that Effie and Mozu make great teammates, while Nyx and Mozu have virtually no synergy. It'll take a bit longer to develop their relationship. In the meantime, it's helpful if we distribute enough experience to Nyx for her to reach level 11 in time for Chapter 10. That gives her a second chance to gain a point of speed, which is important because 14 speed is a key benchmark there, and Nyx starts with 11. As long as Nyx hits her 60% speed growth at least once, she'll be able to reach 14 speed with only a tonic. We lucked out and got that point of speed on Nyx's first level, so we don't have to worry about it. But it's nice when our strategies have built-in backups to improve our odds of reaching these kinds of thresholds. Nyx has been working towards some other goals too. You may have noticed that we've had her support Odin several times, enough to unlock C support. We're not pairing Odin with Nyx in this run, so that's not likely to matter very much, but when I can, I prefer to have early game strategies that keep my options open. That way, if I want to do another run with different pairings, I can keep using my existing strategies in the beginning. There are a few small benefits to having these kinds of extraneous C supports, even beyond the extra bonuses that you can get between the characters with pair up or tag team. For example, we saw after Chapter 6 that we can build a statue of each character when they get a certain number of kills. That statue raises the cap on a specific stat for that character. If a particular unit scores enough kills, we can upgrade their statue to level 2, and then every character who has a support rank with them, even a lowly C support, will also have their cap raised in that stat. Nyx's statue is a magic one. Depending on how you use Odin, an increased magic cap may truly matter for him. If Nyx gets enough kills over the course of the run, then her C support with Odin might make a big difference. We're also aiming to get the C support between Nyx and Corrin. More than anything, that's because of supportive. Corrin and Nyx won't be working together very often in the long term, but there are a couple of places in the upcoming chapters where they will need to team up. When they do, the extra 10 hit that Corrin can provide to Nyx is massive. It solves most of her accuracy issues. And of course, the damage reduction effect of supportive is a lifesaver too. To get their C support, Nyx and Corrin need to see one more round of combat together. We also want Corrin and Arthur to finish their C support, but we've achieved that already. The two of them have not actually supported each other in combat at all on this mission, but they've been adjacent during combat 3 times, and that's enough. We are continuing to work on other supports as we finish up this mission, most importantly the Corrin Silas, Odin Elise, and Arthur Elise ones.
We have no choice.
It'll work out.
To set up a second kill for Mozu right here, we had to ensure that Nyx's attack would deal enough damage for Mozu to be able to kill with no outside support. Odin doesn't give Mozu a strength bonus, and Mozu can't use a dual strike while Odin is paired up with her.
I did it!
If Effie had taken Mozu from Silas in place of Odin, then she would have granted Mozu 2 extra strength, making that kill threshold less of an issue. But this way we can set up in a better position for next turn. And Nyx always had the option to use thunder instead of fire if she had to. Elise is about halfway to her next level. She's not going to get there on this map, but raising more characters to level 11 will be one of our major goals in our next battle, Invasion 1. We can certainly succeed in Chapter 10 with the stats we already have, but if we gain even more stats, we may be able to spend less money on tonics and forging. Corrin will be the first character to engage the boss. Almost everyone else is going to swing east to fight the last few regular Faceless. We want to milk this boss for experience, so we want Corrin to deal as little damage as possible.
For justice!
Uh-oh. What now?
I won't let you down! This one's on me!
Effie can make Elise re-equip her bronze axe for the sake of accuracy on enemy phase. Except for that one time when a Faceless could have gone the wrong way, the sequence of moves that we followed for this battle will work basically every time. But sometimes we have to make adjustments on things like weapon selection depending on our exact stats. For example, Elise hasn't gained any strength at all in her 5 levels as a Wyvern Rider, and because of that, she has been dealing a little bit less damage than usual. As a result, Mozu cannot kill this Faceless using Nyx's dual strike. Not when Nyx is using fire, anyway. Fimbulfetter has 5 more might than fire does, so its dual strikes will deal at least 2 more damage. In this case, that's enough to get the kill, as long as it doesn't miss.
Here I go. Your turn, child. Stand aside! Thanks!
So far, Mozu's growths have been pretty typical, except that she has gained magic twice in 5 levels on a 15% growth. It would be pretty amusing if that keeps up. Maybe she could do something with the Shining Bow.
Don't take all the glory!
I'm with you.
Korn equips the Yato to strengthen his dual strike. He will only get experience from dual striking if his attack actually deals damage. That restriction does not apply to weapon experience though. A dual strike counts for weapon XP even if it deals 0 damage, and even if the target is a parrot partner who blocks the dual strike automatically. The limitation on weapon experience gains is that on Lunatic mode, only the first 5 rounds of combat against a single enemy count. After that, you can't get any more from that enemy. In other words, the limit on weapon experience you can gain from a single target is 10. 5 from the lead unit's attacks, and up to 5 more if there are dual strikes. This system is meant to limit the behavior we're engaging in right now, exploiting a stationary boss for additional experience by hitting it with weak attacks over and over again. Unlike certain other games in the series, it doesn't matter whether the lead unit doubles or not. They get exactly 1 point of weapon experience either way. We have purposely turned off our friendship to make Silas deal less damage.
My aching blood!
Odin is moving here to help Elise weaken the final non-boss Faceless. Mozu will then use Elise's dual strike for the kill.
Can we do this?
It's worth checking exactly how much damage Mozu can deal so that we can make the numbers line up correctly.
So excited!
Uh-oh. What now?
I am Fate's accomplice!
I was here first. I'll be your shield.
For justice!
I'll protect you. We'll be okay. You're so fast. You saved me.
I'm with you. We're not done yet.
Here I go.
All we have left to do is to kill the boss. We'll take 1 more turn to set that up. That's going to involve a small amount of pair-up shenanigans to put everyone in the right positions.
I'll do my best. Don't come any closer.
Shall we? Over here!
By returning Arthur to Mozu, Elise makes Mozu strong enough to damage the boss with her dual strikes. Mozu only needs 19 attack for that, and she'll get 1 bonus point from Elise's personal skill in enemy phase, so Elise can make Mozu equip her bronze lance instead of her javelin without sacrificing any damage.
You'll be all right. Careful out there.
The chosen hero arrives!
Strength is everything.
I will help you.
This is our 5th round of combat against this enemy, so it's the last time we can earn any weapon experience. As we continue to fight the boss, the amount of regular experience we get from each round of combat also declines, but it does so gradually. If Nyx attacks now, she can just barely gain enough XP to reach level 11.
Be careful. Not over yet.
That's not exactly what we were looking for, but Nyx did get HP, magic, speed, and defense on her first level. We'll take this.
Let's do this. Let me help.
Please, accept my help. It's not over yet. You're not alone. I'll crush them!
This could be tough.
Strength is everything!
We can do this together.
I'll handle this miscreant!
Felicia attacks close to last so as to not prematurely debuff the boss.
Careful out there! To the rescue! Be careful!
I won't let you die. I'll go with you.
Mozu finally delivers the killing blow. Or, more accurately, Effie does, but Mozu gets most of the credit anyway.
Try me off the side!
At level 7, Mozu has ended up a tiny bit behind on strength and skill, slightly ahead on magic, speed, and luck, and otherwise basically on par with her averages. All in all, it's a pretty good showing. I think she'll be fine.
All right! Huh? Listen.
Huh?
Yeah. Yes.
I'll do my best.
Next time, we defend ourselves from some mysterious invaders. It's our last chance to prepare ourselves for the famous Chapter 10. See you in the castle.